Dave, give me your real name, your whole name.
David Patrick Bartlett.
Thanks, Dave. When were you born?
March 10th, 1949.
Where do you live now?
I live in Stout, Ohio, just past Friendship.
Okay. You know we're doing a little recording here of your military, and it's our way of honoring the veterans and preserving for posterity their memory. And anybody can come in and see it. Your family, 100 years from now, want to check you out. So you're down in Stout, Ohio currently.
Yes.
And where were you before then? Where did you live?
I lived on Grandview in Portsmouth.
Okay. How long were you there?
Probably about 6 years.
6 years?
Yes.
How long you been down in Stout?
I was 30.
Down in the country a little bit there? Or?
Right on the river.
Are you?
Yeah.
Well, that sounds nice.
It is nice, except for right now.
Not nice now. A little high water, isn't there?
Yes, we're used to it.
Where were you born?
I was born in Portsmouth.
Okay. And what were your parents' names?
My dad was Walter David Bartlett, and my mom was Betty Christine Haggerty Bartlett.
Say her maiden name again.
Haggerty.
Haggerty. Okay. I'm going to give you a little test here. We'll see how far we can go back.
Okay.
Okay. Now your dad's parents' names, your paternal grandparents.
Okay. My grandfather's name was David Walter Bartlett.
Okay.
And his wife was Henrietta.
That's going to come to you in a little bit.
Yeah, that would be. I'm trying to think. I should. I enjoy the ancestry, and I'm finding a blank.
Well, that's all right. That's going to come to you. And when you do, just blurt it out.
Okay.
Now, your grandfather's parents' names?
Was Major Daniel Bartlett.
Major.
Major was a given name, not a rank.
Okay.
And he was married to Sarah Ann Moore.
Okay.
Yes.
You say you enjoy ancestry. Can you
Yes.
get any further than that?
Depends on which side you want to go to. The Bartlett side goes all the way back to probably around Massachusetts and Boston area. I know that Major Daniel and the Bartletts came from Grayson County, Virginia, just right after the Civil War. Mm-hmm. I had grandparents that fought on both sides.
Does somebody have a tree? Has somebody written this down?
I do have a membership to Ancestry.com, and yes, we do. Okay. And we've done the DNA, and we've tied as much of it as we can. I mean, it's always ongoing, and it can get really encumbersome. I mean, it get large. Depends on how big you want to make it.
We're not talking about a family tree. We're talking about a bramble bush, I think.
Oh, my. Yeah, it definitely is.
Now, let's go over to your mom's side. Now, say her name again.
Haggerty's.
Okay.
Now, they came from Hanging Rock, and then they came from Ireland.
Now, Hanging Rock, we're talking about in Lawrence County,
Ohio.
Okay. So, Ireland, what were her parents' names?
I should have brought a piece of paper.
You didn't know you were going to be tested.
No. There were, I'm trying to remember all the names. There's a bunch of them.
Did she have a lot of siblings?
She had 8 brothers and sisters.
Boy.
And they're all gone.
Are they?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are your parents still living?
No.
Okay. What part of Ireland did her folks come from?
They were from an area there in southern Ireland, and they weren't indentured. They came on their own, and they came through Philadelphia, then through Pittsburgh, and then they came down this way.
Did you have people that go back to the Revolutionary War?
Not that I've been able to see who was in members of it, but I just haven't discovered that yet. And as of right now, no.
Now let's go in the other direction here. You have brothers and sisters.
I have two brothers,
What are their names?
Michael Bartlett and Dale Lynn Bartlett. Mike was a major in the Air Force. Mike passed away in 1982. And Lynn's retired and lives here in Portsmouth.
What's he retired from?
He owned the Blockhouse and he was a bartender. He worked at the Stag Bar.
Okay. Was he in the service too, ever?
No, he was probably the only one besides Mom who wasn't in the service.
Was your dad in the service?
Oh yeah, my dad was in the Navy almost 16 years.
Really?
He went in 1939. His mother had to sign for him to go in. So he was actually in when World War II started.
Was he in the Pacific or in the Atlantic or
Both.
both?
Yeah.
Okay. He saw a lot of stuff then, didn't he?
He had 8 battle stars.
Really?
Yeah. He's
He was into it. What do you know any of his ships that he was in?
Yeah, yes, I do. The first one that I know of was he was on the Birmingham, USS Birmingham.
which is a light cruiser, and he was on the USS Augusta. And the time he was on the Augusta was the flagship for the President of the United States at that time.
I think that was in the Atlantic, was it? And,
Yes, that was the Atlantic.
Winston Churchill came on, was it?
Yes.
Did he see Winston
He
Churchill?
was there.
He was there.
Yeah.
Amazing.
He spent the first year and a half, I believe, in the Atlantic, and I think it was hard to get stories out of him. He didn't talk much about it, and you had to really persevere to stay after it. When I was growing up, we lived on Argonne Road, and at that time, all the dads had been in the service,
Right.
and they would gather in the evenings in the summertime, and they would talk about their military services, and I just could not get enough. I loved it.
Now you're talking about Argonne Road in Portsmouth, right
Yes.
up the road here. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Well, now you had a brother in the Air Force, did you say?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And then did he make that a career?
Yes, he did.
Okay.
But he died of cancer when he was about 36 years old.
Gosh.
And at that time, he was a major stationed at Hill Air Force Base.
Okay. Okay. Now, are you married?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And let me ask you this: are you married, single, divorced, widowed, separated, or all the above?
I'm married.
One time?
Well, this is the second time.
Okay. What's
First
your
time
wife's?
was a learner's permit.
Right. I've done that. Your wife's name? What is her name?
Sherry Riddle Bartlett.
Will is her maiden name?
Riddle.
Riddle. Okay.
And they're from South Shore.
Okay. Now, do you have children?
Yes, I have 2 sons, David Nicholas and Brennan Joseph.
Now, are they with wife one, number one, or two?
They're both number 2.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Now, where did you go to school?
When I started out elementary school at Lincoln School,
Yeah.
over in Kenney's Lane, and then junior high was at McHenry, and then Portsmouth High School. I graduated in 1967.
So after you graduated, what did you do?
4 days after graduation, I was at Fort Knox in basic training.
Were you drafted or did you join?
I did what I wanted to do. I joined.
Fort Knox. I was at Fort Knox in 1967. I didn't see you.
Well, the place was pretty crowded at that
It was
time.
very crowded.
You could have been one of those guys, everybody standing in line getting a haircut and crying as they come out the other side. I think they were cleaning Detroit out at that time.
Oh, yeah. Why did you join the Army and not the Navy like your dad, or Air Force like your brother, or what was that about?
It was just something that I wanted to do. My dad always told me, he said, you're not a great student. And I said, oh, I know that, Dad. He said, what are you going to do? And I said, probably the military. Now, this discussion happened the morning after graduation.
Oh.
It tells you how we were excited about an education at the time.
Yeah.
So he looked at me and he said, let's do something. I said, what's that? He said, let's just go ahead and take a physical. And if you pass the physical, back then I'm sure everybody passed the physical. So he said, when you pass, he said, you can stay home all summer. And he said, you can play, but he said, come September, when school starts, he said, you can go in the military. And then he proceeded to break my plate right there. And he said, if you don't choose college or the military, he said, there's the door. He said, you have to do something.
You have to do something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was probably I was that kid that you had to push anyway.
Hmm.
I needed to push.
Well, I mean, 4 days after graduation, you were at Fort Knox?
Yes.
So he didn't have to push too hard, did he?
Well, no, I had always, that's what I wanted. I was the kid that sat in school and I had my books inside the curriculum books. And I'd sit there and I was just a dreamer, and I just never got enough reading. Mm-hmm. And it was always something like that. I mean, it started out like that.
There was one other question I wanted to ask you too. I have here, like we try to develop a little family tree and everything. Your wife's parents' names, do you know?
Billy Joe Riddle and Francis Cuff Riddle.
Okay. From
he was Dr. Riddle here in Portsmouth.
Oh, really?
And he was born in McRoberts, Kentucky. Mm-hmm. I mean, his family, everybody in that family, they were all coal miners. Mm. He went to McRoberts High School, and there were 4 kids in his class. And out of the 4 kids in his class, 3 of them went to college and graduated. And everybody at that time, they were all coal miners. So
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is.
That's amazing. Now, her mother.
Fran was from Nashville.
Fran.
And she was a nurse, Francis Cuff. Mm-hmm. And she met him when he went to Vanderbilt. He applied to 9 different medical schools when he graduated from the University of Kentucky, and he was accepted at 8 of them, and he chose Vanderbilt to go to. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So then that's where he met his wife. That's where he met.
Yeah, he met Fran.
Fran.
Yeah.
Okay. So are they still living?
No.
Okay. All right. Now, so let's get back here now. You 4 days later. That's kind of like my son in a way. I mean, he came home. He said, "Hey, Dad, I'm going to the Army in 2 days." What?
I understand that. That's a shock for a parent.
Okay.
I was working at the time I did it. I was working for Stakers Drugs on Chillicothe Street, and I drove the little pill wagon around, and we delivered all the medicines and took all the deliveries and stuff and did that. And when I decided to make the move to go, I called my mom from Ashland, which is where I went for all the tests and the physicals and everything. I told her, I said, you should probably call Mr. Staker and tell him I won't be at work for the next 3 years. My dad said my mom wouldn't talk to him again for about, probably 2 months.
Really?
Yeah.
She didn't want you to go.
No. All her brothers had served during World War II.
Oh.
And she was not real big about it.
Mothers are like that.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. She was. She's the lady that wrote 365 letters for every day in Vietnam.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was.
Do you still have them?
No, I don't. They were lost in a fire.
Oh goodness! What an archive that would be.
Oh,
what a treasure.
Yeah, I think about it all the time, and it's one of those things.
So here you are. How long was boot camp? Was it 8 weeks or?
Well, I went through a reception station. It lasted about a week. Mm-hmm. In a reception station, it's just pure tests, haircuts, shots, clothes. Yeah, everything was at Fort Knox. And I probably stayed reception station for about 2 weeks because I kept taking more. What you do is you start out in a room and there's probably 600 guys and you're taking tests. And as you score lowly, the room starts dropping in size. Mm-hmm. And I got down to the point where I think I tested for about 3 or 4 days and then they let me go. Mm-hmm. They decided they had found out everything they needed and they put me back out in the open.
What kind of testing?
They did all kind of aptitude testing and they wanted math, languages, and to see what all you were capable of doing at that time. Mm-hmm.
So they determined you could carry a rifle?
Yeah, I had a heartbeat. But I mean, I'm doing what I always wanted to do. I know there's a lot of friends that were draftees, and draftees serve with absolute total loyalty.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm that guy that wanted to go. I volunteered to go. And I was never for the draft. I'm still not for the draft. I think if you want to go, you go. If you don't want to go, that's fine. I think it works better that way for both groups.
What was your MOS?
I was an 11 Echo 2T, which I was an armor crewman. I was the gunner. When I finally got out, I was a gunner on a M551 Sheridan airborne assault vehicle.
Okay. So you were in armor.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Actually, cavalry unit.
What unit was it?
I was in B Troop, 3rd Squadron, 4th United States Cavalry, with the 25th Infantry Division.
2015.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So your boot camp is just basic Army, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then you go to an advanced boot camp for armor. Right? Did you stay at
went
Fort
to
Knox?
I went to AIT at Fort Knox. I stayed right there.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I stayed right
Each
there.
one of them was about 8 weeks, and there
Okay.
was an NCO school in between. I went to that for 2 weeks,
Mm-hmm.
and then as late '67, when we were finishing up our AIT, we were all getting orders, and there was a bunch of guys that I had been with, some of them from basic and all of them from AIT. There was like 8 of us. I think 6 of us had orders for Vietnam, and 2 had orders for Germany. I, at that time, had orders for Germany.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to Germany in November of '67.
How long were you there?
I was in Germany for 18 months. And
Where in Germany were you in?
I was stationed in Bamberg. Bamberg's in Bavaria. It's just about 10 miles from the Czechoslovakian border.
Hmm.
And I was in the 4th Armored Division. It was the 3rd Battalion, 35th Armor.
Mm-hmm.
And we were the guys that did the border patrol and did all the stuff there. And we were the fold-a-gap fillers.
Fill the gap.
Fill the gap.
I don't know if I like the sound of that.
Well, we probably didn't either.
Well, I wanted to ask you that. Did you ever have to go to Ireland Army Hospital?
As a matter of fact, I did, with poison ivy.
Did you?
Yes, I did.
I was a medical supply officer there.
Really?
I was, yeah, Ireland Army Hospital.
I got. I'm trying to remember. It was. We were doing. It was escape and evasion class. There was, and I got poison ivy pretty bad, and they sent me over there for a couple of days. The guy said, "You can probably get out." I said, "I don't want to get out." I said, "I'm a volunteer." He said, "You're crazy," and I said, "No, I'm just doing what I want to do." And he said, "Well, anybody else could just get out right now." And I said, "I don't want out."
They would discharge you, medical discharge, because you had poison ivy.
Yeah, I was allergic to poison ivy.
Okay. Well, anyway, you get through that trial, and you are on the border of Czechoslovakia, and it sounds interesting, actually.
It was very interesting. In 1968, the Russians invaded Czechoslovakia, so it was extremely exciting at that time.
Yeah.
And we had no idea what was going on. We had a United States, there was an alert every month in Europe for the Army, and we spent a lot of time outside of the concern in the woods. I mean, the vehicles were fully loaded all the time. They were loaded for bear.
Did they have poison ivy over there?
No, they didn't, but they had a lot of big pine trees.
The big pine trees.
Big, yeah.
Well, okay, that sounds fascinating. You're on the border with Czechoslovakia there, and that's when the Soviet Union invaded Czechoslovakia, the Prague Spring. And were refugees coming across? Did you see any of that situation?
Didn't see any of that stuff. The Autobahn at the time was still pretty busy, and we could watch it. But we weren't, the tanks we used then were M60, M60A1s, and they weighed right around 52, 53 tons, and we weren't allowed on the highway with those. So we were never allowed on the highway with them until then. Then we were allowed to go on the highway. And
Did it tear them up? Did the tanks tear them up for you? Yeah.
So we kind of realized it was a real thing when they were letting us get on the roads.
Did you ever see any Soviet people?
Not once, never.
So how long were you? 18 months, I think
18
you said.
months.
Yeah, okay. So did you like Germany? Did you like it there?
I liked a lot. Yeah, part of it. I learned to snow ski in Garmisch. So I would every time I got a 3-day pass or time, I would go down there and ski. And there was a lot to see. I went to Paris, went to London, went to Barcelona, saw a bullfight. That was different.
Yep.
And it just wasn't where I wanted to be. I knew Vietnam was going on, and that's where I wanted to be. And at that time, I volunteered to go, and my platoon sergeant turned it down.
Why? Well, he wanted you to stay.
He wanted me to stay. He thought I was too young and I would be making a mistake. He had been in the Army probably 12, 14 years. And he thought, you don't want to do that. And I said, yeah, I do. That's where I want to be. That's why I joined.
Had he been?
No, he had never been.
He just thought he was taking care of you, though.
Yeah, he did. He was a good man.
When did you get married?
I got married, I better get this right, April the 18th, 1980.
Okay. Was that wife number 2?
That's wife number 2.
1980? And so you were not in the service when you were, did you get married in the service to one? Or
No. I came home after I got out of the service, and I served an apprenticeship with IBEW 575 here in Portsmouth. So I was an electrician for 35 years, and I worked here, I traveled, I went a little bit everywhere. I think I spent 22 years working at Airstech Chemicals, USS Steel, and the chemicals there. I worked there for 22
Up
years.
at Haverhill?
At Haverhill.
Okay. Well, now getting back to Germany there, my daughter actually lives in Munich.
Really?
Or near Munich right
I've
now.
been Munich. That's southern Bavaria. It doesn't
Yeah.
get any prettier than that, especially all your mountains and stuff there in the southern. It's gorgeous.
We went over to visit, and what was the name of that lake? And Berchtesgaden, the Hitler's Eagle's Nest, and all that sort of stuff. A beautiful lake and all that sort of thing there.
Did you go over to Salzburg?
No, we didn't go to Salzburg.
Well, certainly we went to Salzburg because I think it might have been the 64 Olympics is where they did the ski jumping. They did it at Salzburg, and they still had all those big ski jumps and stuff. And we got to take a trip up there, and I looked all the way down that hill, and I thought, those guys are crazy.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Well, how did you end up in Vietnam then when you've got a platoon sergeant that said he's not going to sign for you?
Well, this was right after the Tet Offensive, and there was a call going out across Europe. They needed door gunners on helicopters, and they needed them desperately. So I volunteered as a door gunner to go to Vietnam, and I think it only took like about 6 weeks. That's moving quick in the military for them to make a decision. That's how desperate they were.
Were you able to come home in between?
Yeah, I did come home. I came home and spent 30 days.
Okay.
My dad he said, well, why are they sending you? And I said, I don't know, Dad. They just want me over there. I wasn't going to tell him that I'd volunteered. But being military, he read my orders, and he said, you volunteered. And he said, you can't say that out loud. Mom will shoot us both.
Right. She probably would have.
Oh, yeah.
On a gunship, was that like a Huey?
Yeah.
What was that machine? Was that an M60 or was?
They had M60s on there. Plus, they also had some of them had the newer M173, which is a minigun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which were you on?
I volunteered. I was going as an armor. They were going to have to train me. And my training would have been when I got on the helicopter, the M60. That would have been all the training I would have got. I'm sure that's all they wanted anyway.
So you fly out of where, San Francisco or what?
When I came home, I flew to Fort Lewis. Flew up there.
Yeah, Washington.
I went to jungle warfare school for 2 weeks, and then.
Did that teach you anything about the real
Not really.
jungle?
Not really.
I'm thinking that's the Northwest woods.
It was pretty. I mean, I'm sure that there's nothing in Washington that looks like Vietnam. You can believe that.
You're right. Okay.
So I went through that for 2 weeks, and then they flew us out of there. We flew from McChord Air Force Base to we went to Alaska. We had to stop there, and we went from Alaska. Well, we got off the plane, and they let us go to the bar, which was probably a mistake. And the next thing I knew, I woke up and we were in Yokota, Japan, and they were switching planes. They wouldn't fly the big pretty planes into Vietnam, so we flew in. We changed planes and flew into Cam Ranh Bay.
What's the mood like on that plane?
Sober.
Sober.
I think the worst thing, well, as we were getting ready to board our plane in Yokota, a plane was unloading from Vietnam.
Oh,
And these guys were getting off. And
We were really shocked by how they looked.
how they look. Like they've been through it.
Yeah.
Did you ever see that movie, Platoon?
Yeah, I've watched it a couple times. I don't watch too many of them.
The very first part of the movie, he's getting off the plane and there are soldiers getting.
Yeah.
That's what you saw.
Yeah. You look at them and you think, wow, they made it out of here, you know. It doesn't really sink in that it's real.
You're at Cam Ranh Bay now. What happened?
We're in Cam Ranh Bay. We stayed there, and they send you all over country depending on where you're going to go. So I'm thinking I'm going to go someplace and be a door gunner. So I'm sitting there waiting for orders, and finally I get an order to go to the 25th Infantry Division, and I'm going to go to the 3rd Squadron, 4th Cav. And I thought, well, cavalry units have helicopters. And they load the group of us up on a C-130 and flew us from Cam Ranh Bay. We went into Tan Son Nhut, went to Tan Son Nhut, and then they bussed us from Tan Son Nhut over to Bien Hoa, where the 90th replacement was. And then, you know, you get more paperwork and a lot of waiting and sitting around and thinking, you know, it's crazy.
Go there and sit.
Yeah, hurry up, get in this line, and then sit there for 2 hours. But it would be different. And finally, I got the orders, and I was going to be, the 3/4 Cav was a mechanized cavalry unit. And I thought, now, wait a minute, what's going on here? And I said, I thought I was supposed to be a door gunner. He says, when they saw that you had, that you were armor, he said, they just brought the Sheridans in country in January. This was in late April. And I was a Spec 5. And they said, with your experience, we're going to put you on the Sheridans. And I said, I've never even seen a Sheridan. What's a Sheridan?
What's a Sheridan?
What's a Sheridan? So they put us on a bus at Bien Hoa and bussed us to Cu Chi. And that's where they burst my bubble.
Burst your bubble?
Burst my bubble. I wasn't going to be a door gunner.
Right.
So I was a little bit upset, you
Yeah.
know. But it was going to be exciting, and it's what I wanted to do, and I was going to make the best of it. When I got there, the unit was still on the field, and they were supposed to come in a couple of days. So I was bored, and they were getting me stuff ready to go to the field. And then they came in, and I realized it was real, because this was a rough outfit.
The 25th had been through it.
Oh, yeah. 3/4 Cav was a tough unit. They were the reactionary force for the 25th Infantry Division.
Dave, you ever talked to your kids about this?
Not really. Now, Nick, the oldest one, is in the Army.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a captain in the Army.
Where is he?
He's stationed at Fort Hood right now.
Fort Hood. That's 1st Cav, isn't it?
Yeah, he's 1st Cav.
Yeah. Okay.
No, one of those.
What's his story?
Well, we got him through college, got him an education, a degree in biology, and he goes to work for, in Columbia, Battelle. He goes to work for Battelle. So he's living and working up there in Columbus for about a year. And then he calls home one evening. He said, Dad, he said, I need to tell you something. And I thought, oh, he's going to get married. He says, you know, he said, I joined the Army today. I said, you what? He said, I joined today. And I said, why? He said, it's just something I've got to do. He says, I'm sure you understand. And I said, well, I understand, but what's Mom going to say? And I said, you know, what are you going to do? He said, well, he said, I applied, and he said, I took all the tests, and he said, with my degree, he said, I'm going to go to OCS. He says, I'll be an officer. And I said, well, okay, let's see what happens. So he went to the military, and he went to Fort, Georgia.
Benning.
Fort Benning, went to Fort Benning. And went through basic. Went through his AIT, which was armor. He selected armor. Oh, no, I'm sorry. He went to basic, and then after basic, they sent him straight to OCS. Then after OCS, he passed that. He went airborne, and then he went to the Ranger School, and he tabbed out as a Ranger. And then he left from there to the 3rd Infantry Division at Fort Stewart, and he was stationed there till he deployed once with them to Afghanistan. And then after that, he came home, and his next PCS was at Fort Hood with 1st Cav, and then he deployed with them. So
To Afghanistan again?
Afghanistan, yeah. He's a captain right now.
Is he armor or infantry?
He's cavalry.
Cavalry.
Yeah.
Okay. And now, is he over there now, or is he down at Fort Hood?
He's down at Fort Hood right now.
Okay. Is he married?
Yes, he is.
And you have grandchildren?
No, not yet.
How about your other boy?
Joe's graduate. We got him through college. He graduated at Morehead State, and he works for 84 Lumber. He did work in Lexington, and they transferred him from Lexington to Somerset, so he's in line for a store.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that considered a promotion or something in that?
It's fuzzy at times. You know,
Okay.
you don't know what it is or how it works.
How's 84 Lumber doing?
They're the largest privately owned lumber store in the country.
Really?
Yeah. He said they're good to work for. The benefits and stuff are great. Medical's good. Retirement's good.
There's an 84 store out here, you know.
Yeah.
So, he has the grandkids.
No. He's not married.
He's not married.
He's not married.
All right. So now you're in Vietnam, and the 25th. Now is that the 25th? That's not tropical lightning, is it?
Yes, it is.
It is.
Yes,
Okay,
it is.
Tropical lightning. And the 25th, and you're in the reactionary force with
The 25th, anytime a unit was in contact anywhere in our area of
and
operations,
you're to go.
we were to go to,
Did you go in Sheridan's or?
we went yes, we did.
A Sheridan's a tank. Is it?
Sheridan's a 17-ton tank. It also is capable of firing a Shillelagh missile, which we never had over there. No, we did a lot of jungle busting.
Jungle busting is
Jungle
what?
That's where you're out there going through the jungle,
All right.
an armored vehicles.
With this tank.
Yeah. There, in a cavalry unit, you have, in each platoon, you have 7 armored personnel carriers, M113s, and you have 3 Sheridans in each platoon. And there's 3 platoons in a troop, and there's 3 troops in a squadron. Actually 4 if you want to count the headquarters. And we all operated in different areas doing different things, all 3 companies.
What was your assigned area over there?
Our assigned area, we worked all the exotic places, the Iron Triangle, War Zone C, then Cooey River Plantation.
Parrots Beak.
Parrots Beak, all in that, Parrots Beak in that area, absolutely.
All right. Were you there in 1970?
I left there in March of 70, about 6-8 weeks before they went into
Cambodia.
And 3/4 Cav actually led that in our section.
How long were you in Vietnam?
I was in there exactly 10 months.
10 months.
Yeah.
I thought a tour of duty was 12 or 13 for a Marine or something like that.
At the end of, I ran into a guy that I had gone into the military with, Steve Haynes. He was an MP.
Say it again, his name?
Steve Haynes.
Where's he from?
He's from Portsmouth.
Okay.
Yeah, he was a police officer here in Portsmouth at one time, and he ended up working for the Norfolk and Western, and then he's been a policeman just about all his life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I know him.
Yeah, you probably do.
Okay. So you went in with Steve?
I went in with Steve, and I went in with Mac Bagby.
Who?
Mac Bagby.
I don't know that
They
name.
were both. They both graduated in '66, the year before I did. That's probably why I ended up in the leaving that weekend because when I was in the recruiter's office, these two guys come walking by the door, and they looked in, and they both darted back, and we had a little reunion right there, being crazy, you know.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we got to talking, and I said, "What are you guys doing here?" He said, "Well, we're going tonight." We said, "We joined about 6 months ago. And we're going to Fort Knox tonight." So what are you doing? I said, "Well, I said I'm joining," and I said, "I'm taking the oath." He said, "You going to go with us?" And I looked around at that recruiter. You could just see the cha-chings going on. He was winning the lottery. He said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I looked around that room, and I hooked on that tank, and I said, "I want to be armor." Of course, he thought I was crazy too. So I went with both of them. But I ran into Steve in Vietnam. He was doing a security clearance on me. And
That was a surprise, wasn't it?
yes, it was for both of us.
Yeah.
So when we got down to the end, I was at the point that I was a little bit, at this time, the reality had set in what was really going on. And I thought at that time that Steve said, "Why don't you just get an early out so you can get out of the field?" And I said, "Well," I said, "I don't know." I said, I am not a student. I said, "I don't know if I can even get into college anywhere." He said, "Well, try." But he was getting ready to go home at that time. And he said, "I'll talk to your dad when I get home." And I said, "Okay." So I talked to him letters a couple of times, and finally I did get an early out. We were down around Bung Tao when I got a radio message came over that told me to pull off to the side. There was a helicopter coming to pick me up, and I thought, "Oh, Lord, what have I done?"
You were in the field,
I was in the field.
and they pulled you out of the field
Pulled me out of the field,
and sent you home.
sent me home, put me on a helicopter. I landed in Cu Chi. My first sergeant was really happy with me. No,
Really?
no.
I sort of
He
sensed.
says, "I've never seen this done in my life." And I said, "Well, you kind of drug the paperwork out, didn't you?" And he looked at me, and you know how first sergeants are.
Yeah.
He didn't like a Spec 5 talking to him like that.
Right.
And I said, "Well," he said, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm nobody." He said, "Well, how did you get out?" I said, "I have no idea." I said, "When you kept dragging out my paperwork," I told my dad, I said, "Look," I said, they're not going to let me go. I said, at that time, William Harsher was our congressman. And I said, "Ask him what the procedure is." I said, "I've heard every story you can hear." And then I thought it was over. I didn't think I was going to get out. And then that come over. And I went from being in the jungle on a Friday afternoon, and I started school at OU Portsmouth on Monday or Tuesday. Had just come back from spring break. And I went
3 days. Dirt on your fingernails was still Vietnam.
Well, the good story about that is, first day we're all sitting in this class, and all these co-eds, they had just all come back from spring break. And they were all talking and everything, and they both turned around and looked at me and said, "Man, you have got a heck of a tan. Where did you go?" And I said, "You don't. We wouldn't believe it if I told you." And I never did tell them.
Never told them.
Never told them.
You had a great tan.
I had a great tan. Luckily, in about 2 weeks, most of it washed off.
Did any of those students ever know?
No, you couldn't. You wouldn't. Back then, you didn't tell anybody. You just kept it to yourself.
Right. Okay. Well, you're in the jungle there, and do you have CIB? I mean, you were armor.
Armor, you don't get those. No, the only thing I've got to prove that I was in the field was Purple Hearts.
You have a Purple Heart.
Yeah.
You want to say how you got that?
It was a Sunday morning, June 15th, and we were at Fire Support Base Hampton, and we got like a Chu Hoi came in and said there's a large NVA group less than 2 miles from our Fire Support Base.
Tell me again who came in.
Chu Hoi. A Chu Hoi is a former NVA who has turned and come over to the government side.
Chu Hoi.
Chu Hoi. So he came in and told us where this unit was, and so they decided we needed to go check this out to see if it was real. So we got everything out together. We went as a whole. This was the troop, B troop. So we went down. It was an asphalt highway. We left, went to 2 miles, and turned off on a dirt road.
Are you on your Sheraton?
I'm on the Sheridan. I'm probably back in line, maybe about 8 or 9 vehicles.
You're on an asphalt road. How fast will those things go on that?
About 45.
Oh, you're
Oh, they
kidding.
fly. Yeah, they would. They had little 6-cylinder diesel, Detroit diesel, and they were turbocharged, and they were screamers. They were so loud. Guy said, well, you're never going to sneak up on somebody with those. And I thought, good.
Good.
Good. They give them plenty of time to leave.
All right, all right.
But anyway, we pulled down off the road, and there was a row of trees, and it was about maybe a 75 to 100 yard opening from the road to the tree line. So we pulled down off the road, and we spread out in a line. And we were just sitting there for a long time. We didn't do anything. So
Now, how many tanks were there?
there was a total at that time. There was probably 10 of us.
10 of you.
There was 10. There was 3 tanks and 7 APCs.
APCs, okay, for
in
infantry
one run,
guys.
yeah. Mhm.
Okay, okay.
So we sat in line for about or in a spread. We sat there for probably about 15, 20 minutes, and they were talking on the radios back and forth. And I was sitting there watching, and I thought, man, I'm tired. We got us up too early. So I'm sitting on the side of the Sheridan, and I kind of doze off a little bit. And then it finally said, well, we're going to recon by fire with M79 grenade launchers. And I thought, okay, we got one of those. So we fired about 4 or 5 rounds into the tree line, and there was probably 8 or 9 of us shooting in there, reconning, and nothing happens. They sit there for another 15 minutes. They said, okay, we're going to move through in line. Everybody keep it straight. So we started pulling in. When we got to the tree line, we crossed in the weeds, and we weren't inside there, maybe 6 foot, and there was a brand new trench going both directions.
Ah,
And I looked off to the side, excuse me, and I looked at my buddy Dennis, and I said, whew, this is real. He said, yeah, it is. So we pulled on through. We didn't see anything, but we saw fresh, slit trench. So we pulled right on through, and then we probably got into the trees maybe 100 feet, 200 feet, and then all hell broke loose.
they opened up on you.
Yep.
Did they surprise you?
No, not really.
You
I
knew
mean,
something was there.
We knew something was there, something was going to happen, but I don't think we expected the level that we saw.
Heavy stuff. Were you fighting NVA or BC?
In VA. They were hardcore little guys. You gotta respect them. They were tough. I wouldn't go up against us. There's no way.
They were disciplined troops, weren't they?
Well, I tell you what, I can't think of any unit like the cavalry unit that had the firepower. I mean, we didn't hide behind anything. We just pulled right straight through. We stayed on line. Every vehicle had a 50 caliber. They had a M60 machine gun. The Sheridan had a 152 millimeter main gun.
Yeah.
You're talking that big round, and we had a round called a flechette round, and it
Is that a beehive? Or,
basically like a beehive, except it was 13,000 little steel darts with barbs
yeah.
and little fins on them, and they're just packed in there. And when you shoot that, I mean, it's just like the forest, the jungle disappears. I mean, it just opens up a big area. So we're taking all these RPG rounds and all kinds of stuff going on. It's just extremely loud. I don't think you can explain how loud it was. I don't think I was really scared at the time. It was overwhelming.
You had to do what you had to
And
do.
I was on the back deck. Now I'm the gunner. The gunner on a Sheridan doesn't ride down inside. I mean, it's 115 degrees. You can't. There's no air conditioning. It's not these new tanks.
Did you have any armor around you or anything?
No, there was an armored shield with a 50 for the tank commander, but the loader was on the top. He had an M60, and when we fired the main gun, he would drop down in, load it, lift the breech up, and then the tank commander would fire it from the hip he would just traverse the turret and around and like that. He would pick a spot and shoot it. Well, It's been going on quite a while, and all of a sudden, the tank commander jumps up out of his position and jumps down, jumps on the back deck where I'm standing there. I'm humping ammo. I'm jerking cans of 7.62 for the loader and 50 caliber for him. Every time I open a can, I take a bottle of LSA and shoot the grease on it. It's just oil, because if you don't, the dry fires, they get real hot, and the 50 caliber will actually blow out the bottom when it gets real hot, it depending on the rate of fire. I've seen these barrels turn white hot to where at nighttime you can see the round going through the barrel. You would jump up there when he started coming out the barrel, and they were doing that, the barrels were out, the riflings are gone. So you have to get up there with a pair of asbestos gloves. You're standing on top of it, and you roll this barrel out. You throw it off to the side, it starts a fire. Then you roll another barrel in, you set it up with your headspace and timing gauge, and you just keep going. Well, the tank commander jumped down. I didn't know what was wrong with him. And he jumps down and runs off the back of the tank. So I'm sitting there thinking, and look at Dennis. Dennis just kind of shrugs. He said, just keep humming ammo. He said, it must be the 50s, must be broke. So I didn't jump in the hatch. So I got an M16 on this side, and I'm spraying along the side. We come to an open area, and we're
just
trying
an
to
M16 was what you have?
He's got, Dennis is firing the M60, and I got an M16. And we're just spraying the tree line on both sides as we come in, because where we popped out into the open, there was probably another 40 yards, and there was another tree line. It was like an L coming down the long side. So I'm spraying this way, and he's doing the same thing with the 60. Well, I have to stop and hump ammo for him every time he runs out. And then I have to fill my own. Well, the first thing I knew is I bent over to put a magazine in the 16, and I saw the back blast just come off. It couldn't have been, he was probably less than 50 feet from us when he
What's
shot
a back blast?
You can see
RPG?
RPG backblast. I saw the backblast come out, and I thought, what was that? And all of a sudden, it hit the front shield. I'm here on the back. Dennis is here. There's a shield right here where the 50 sticks out for the tank commander. It hits the shield, goes through the shield. Sheridan hatches open like that. They're two-piece hatches, and they come up. They stick up maybe 16 inches. Well, it went through a 1-inch steel plate, went through underneath the 50, went through this hatch, which is about 1.5 inches thick, and then it come out the other side, and it went between Dennis and myself, and it blew both of us off the top.
Do you see that guy that shot you?
I saw his buddy before he shot us.
So it blew you guys off.
Blew us off the top, and it just immediately again went from the loudest thing you ever heard to just totally muffled, and it ruptured both my eardrums. I think Dennis took the worst part of it, because when it come through the plate on the hatch, it blew all that out, and it hit him. We both had flak jackets on, but nobody zips them up. Just a helmet. I think I was wearing a T-shirt, and Dennis was probably wearing a T-shirt. But it blew us both off the top. First thing I heard was someone was rolling me over, and I heard someone finally say, "Let's get away from that tank before it blows up," because it was smoking big time.
Mm-hmm. So they got you out of there. Did they medevac you then? Or
Oh yeah.
How long did you have to wait before the dust off? Wasn't it?
Well, we didn't have to wait for the dust off. Our SCO, which was our squadron commanding officer, he landed a little Loach, a little four-seater, and he picked us both up. They laid Dennis on the floor, and I got to sit on the seat and put my feet over the top of it. And they flew us back to Hampton. When we got to Hampton, the fire sport base, the dust off met us there and took us to the 12th evac.
Then what happened? You don't have to say.
Well, the hospital filled up quick. I mean, there was maybe 10 or 12 of us in there being worked on at that time.
Have you kept, of course you were wounded, Did you have to go back to the field?
Yes, I did. I got 2 weeks. I spent 10 days in the hospital, and then I spent about a week in base camp. And I had been hit in the face, both hands, arm, shoulder, neck, and both eardrums were ruptured. So, yeah, I did go back to the field.
Couldn't hear anything.
Which is not bad.
It's not too bad.
No.
What happened to
But it
Dennis?
was interesting.
Yeah, what happened to Dennis?
Dennis was flown back to the United States. He didn't come back. He flew home. His was that bad.
How much longer were you in the field then? I mean, some point then this first sergeant's going to wonder what the heck you're getting out of here for.
Well, I went to, once I got released to go back to the field, went back. This happened on June 15th. On July the 18th, I went back to the field. And on July the 19th, I was dusted off again.
You were what? I'm sorry.
I was dusted off again.
You were wounded twice. Do you want to talk about that? I mean, you've got 2 Purple Hearts now, don't you?
Well, I never got the second one. I don't know why. I do know why. My first sergeant and I weren't real good guys. We weren't buddies. He thought I went back he was mad at me because I went back too soon, is what he said. And then I come back in the next day, and then, we were not buddies.
So you're wounded twice. Did you get wounded the third time?
No, no. When I went back to the field after that was probably in September, and I stayed in the field until mid-March, March 21st.
How often did you see the enemy?
Usually when we saw them, it was bodies.
Bodies.
Yeah, lots of bodies. Okay. On the 15th, I think that there were probably somewhere close to 60 bodies. So it was a...
Is that the first time you were wounded, that incident on that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I don't know. After that was over, was there a feeling that you won the battle, or were you just glad that it's over?
No, I don't think we just survived.
We survived the battle.
I wasn't real thrilled with the tank commander because I found out later there's a reason he had jumped down.
Yeah. Why did he leave?
They called it battle fatigue. He just got... It's fear. I mean, I've seen it. I mean, I know exactly. I didn't know what fear was until I went back on July the 19th. And then I realized I wanted to get up and run. And I thought, hell, there's no place to go. Why am I going to run? So you have to face it. And I faced it. I didn't run. I wanted to, but I didn't.
Were you on a Sheraton then too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was that pretty much your station for the whole time you were there?
Well, I've served on both 2 Sheratons in the platoon, the 2-6 and the 2-7. And then after that, I was on an APC. And then my last position, I was the 2-0, which was the platoon leader's vehicle. I was his track commander.
Okay.
So I spent the last as a track commander on 2-0.
What was your rank when you were discharged?
I was a Spec 5.
So have you kept contact with anybody that you were in the Army with?
Yeah, yes I do. There's an association for the 25th Infantry Division. There's an association for the 3/4 Cav. I've got about 5 or 6 guys that I still, we're on Facebook together.
Really?
Yeah, so there's that. I haven't gone into the reunions. I'm not really ready to go to the reunions.
It'll be very emotional. You ever thought about going back to Vietnam?
No.
Some guys do that. I've seen that on History Channel stuff,
Oh, I've thought about that. I wonder how they do it.
Yeah. Well, you can tell it's not easy.
Well, I have nothing but admiration for the NVA. They're tough.
So these guys that you're in contact with, and it's on a pretty regular basis? Or, you know where
Sometimes
they
it
are.
is. We just like anybody on Facebook. Sometimes you have conversations, sometimes you don't. We kind of trade pictures and stuff that I had, and
Yeah.
I sent them to them.
Where do they, have you ever visited any of them?
No.
Where do they live? They're scattered out a bit.
Michigan, Arizona,
Oh,
Iowa. I mean, they're all over.
yeah, yeah.
I think Dennis.
Is he one of them?
No, Dennis died. Dennis died probably about 10 years after the war was over.
Okay.
But I don't think he ever recovered.
He died of his wounds, isn't he?
Well, not really sure. It shortened his life quite a bit.
Were you in contact with him?
No,
before he
I didn't
passed?
really know that he had passed away until we did some search when I was in the Three-Quarter Cab Association.
Yeah.
And then they pretty well keep all the records, and they have they have good records.
You wanted to go in the Army, and then you got out. What did you think about when you got out? You glad you went in?
Yeah, yes, I was. I'd do it again.
You would?
Yeah.
So they fly you home. 3 days later, you're sitting in a classroom with these cute little co-eds.
Admire my suntan.
Who are looking at you and, ooh, nice tan. And I just find that remarkable.
I think that's the best story of all of it.
It is. It absolutely is. And what did you do then? Did you go to school here, or OU Southern, or Athens?
I went here to Athens, and
Where?
then I went to the Portsmouth branch.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We had a branch there.
Yeah. So in between, I had a friend that was living in Columbus that was he was an X-ray technician at Mount Carmel, and he got me into their school to be an X-ray technician.
Oh, okay.
So my dad said he didn't want me to leave again. I'd been gone for 3 years, and he wanted me to stay home. So I ended up getting an apprenticeship to become an electrician. So.
And you were an electrician for 30 years?
35 years.
35 years, okay.
I love doing what I do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
Not everybody gets to enjoy their job.
Are you retired now?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I am.
Okay. Your wife, what does she do?
She's a nurse. She's an RN.
Still?
Still working. Yeah, she's
SOMC?
5 years younger than yeah.
Okay. All right. So, did your folks know you were coming home that day that you came home?
I called from San Francisco.
Did you?
We were at what is it?
Presidio?
Presidio. I called there on a Sunday evening, and Mom said, "This is a good phone call." I said, "Mom, I'm in San Francisco."
Did she yell?
Yep, we all did.
Yeah, I bet. And then you flew from San Francisco.
Flew from there, but it's like 4 or 5 of us.
Going to
We
where?
rented a limo going from the Oakland Army Terminal. We rented a limo to go to the San Francisco International, and we flew across the United States. And as we flew across, everybody stopped, changing and going different places. Some got off in Chicago, and I got off in Columbus, and the others were going across on to New York.
I got a question for you.
Okay.
When you are flying from Vietnam, you land in San Francisco?
We landed at Travis Air Force Base, just would be northwest of San Francisco.
Right.
We landed at Travis Air Force Base on a Sunday morning.
Were you in uniform?
We were in jungle fatigues.
Were there any civilians there with signs or anything?
No, I didn't see anything there, but I did see a bunch of them when we left the Oakland Army Terminal to go to the airport. We did see a bunch of protesters there, but for some reason they didn't bother us. They wanted to. You could tell they wanted to, but they didn't.
wanted to.
No.
I would think that they would regret that.
Well, everybody has to live with their own history.
I had a Marine that I interviewed, and he said when he got off, he was ready to attack them.
Well, we didn't like them, but we were more
You,
I was going home.
you were going home.
Yeah.
You get off in Columbus. You get off the plane. Are you still in uniform?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. How people treat you there?
No one paying attention to me. I was invisible, which is not a complaint.
No complaints
No
there.
complaint.
How did you get from Columbus down to Portsmouth, though? Did you take a bus, or did
Well,
somebody meet you? Or
I had two friends living in Columbus. One of them was going to High State, and the other one was working at Mount Carmel. And I called them. Well, they came down to the airport, and then after I called them, I called home, and they said, well, where are you? And I said, I'm in Columbus. So my dad came up and picked me up. Dad and my brother. Mom couldn't make the trip.
you couldn't?
She couldn't make the trip.
It was too tore up.
Yeah.
A good day, wasn't it? Do you have any souvenirs from Vietnam? Pictures.
I got all kinds of pictures. I have tons of pictures. If you go to Facebook, there's all kinds of pictures on my Facebook page that I share with my friends.
Okay.
There's tons
I'll
of
go ahead and friend you there.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. How about other things like, I don't know, little stuff, that Vietnamese stuff?
Yeah. No, I was never a collector. I never collected autographs or anything like that.
Would you recommend to anybody, boy or girl now, to join the military?
I think one of the things that really got to where I started searching for the people that I was in the service with and joining was when my oldest son Nick went into the Army. At that time, I thought, okay, I can do this. I'll support him and do the things that people didn't do for us because we weren't liked. We were the lepers in the group, you know, and you just learn to not say anything. You just keep. There's nobody you can ever really talk to until my son went in. Then I could talk to him.
Talk to your boy.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else you want to say? Anything you want to talk about?
I think the only thing that upsets me is I read an article where the census showed like 10 million people, men, had served in Vietnam, claimed to serve in Vietnam. And there were only like 3 million that were even there at the time. That kind of really, you know, it says a lot. You know, those are the same people that didn't like us to begin with. You know, I was never a hippie. I'm extremely conservative.
I fought the Vietnam War from behind the desk.
It's the best place
Ireland
to do
Army Hospital.
I tell you what, it probably wasn't a fun job.
I tell people kind of with hoping to make them laugh. We had some horrendous battles in that office. Some of those women were mean, boy.
I tell you, you have to do what you want to do in life. You know, it's not always going to be nice. There's going to be bad memories, and there's going to be good memories.
Yeah.
I think the worst memory I have is there was an accidental
Friendly fire. That would be a bad one.
We had stopped about midday, and it was really hot out. It's always hot out. It's always humid. And we had stopped, and there was like a low spot like this, and there was a couple of armored personnel carriers in front of us, and there were two tanks, two Sheridans behind them. So I was talking to the dismounts, which are all 11B guys, and we were talking and joking around. And there had been 4 of them behind the tank, behind the armored personnel carrier. And one of them had opened the door on the back of an APC and walked in, had just got inside. He was going to get something. And the rest of them were just sitting there trying to be in the shade. And all of a sudden, an explosion. And I turn around and they're gone.
Those guys are gone.
They're gone. The tank commander on the AP, on the Sheridan beside us, Sheridan has an electronic breach, and everybody always keeps the breach open and all their safeties on. Well, this guy had his breech loaded, had it over and closed, had all the safeties off, and there's a tank commander's override, and he's standing beside the armor shield trying to pull his M16 up over, and the sling pulls the trigger on this 152 millimeter mag gun, and it's a flechette round.
The guy inside the APC, was he all right?
Yeah, he lived. The track commander was laying there's the hatch comes up like this, and he's kind of resting on it. He's got his helmet on, and his arms stick out just about where the shield is. Well, all those flechette rounds hit him in both arms, all those little darts. And first thing I did is I jumped down, and there was nothing to be done for the three behind. And then I climbed up on top, and we started taking care of him. But
that's the worst.
That was the worst. I mean, it never gets worse than when you do it to your own.
Another question for you then. Okay. What was the best time you ever had experience in the Army?
I think the statutes of limitations probably run out.
Did you ever go to Hong Kong?
No, I went to, I got a 7-day leave to go to, I was going to go to Taipei, but I kept getting knocked off flights. So I went and stayed 5 days in the Cholon section of Saigon. I had a pretty good time. Cholon is the Chinese section of Saigon. So and I stayed there 3 days.
They can show a soldier a good time?
I've heard that. I've heard that.
Okay.
Statute of limitation. I think the good time is another Spec 5 and myself decided we wanted a minigun on APC.
A minigun, okay.
We wanted to put one on an APC. So at nighttime, we went over to the helicopter flight line, and we stole a minigun off the helicopter. And it took us 2 days. We ran on stand down. We got 4 days each month where we come in and we work on the vehicles, and then we went back to the field. So we mounted this minigun and all the electronics and the feed trays and the ammo boxes inside. And we went down in Kuchi Base Camp. We went to the other side where there was a free fire zone where you could test fire weapons. Well, there's 5 or 6 of us on there wanting to see this thing work. And so he gets up there, and the guy's name is Billy Disharoon. He's a Spec 5. He's from Texas. So he hits that trigger, and that thing goes right straight up in the air. We couldn't hold it down.
Really?
And we tried it 2 or 3 times, and we thought, wow, how's this going to work? So we went back to the motor pool. We're sitting over there in our area. He says, we need to steal a Jeep and take two of the rear shocks off the back of the Jeep. So we made a mount to where you could move that thing up and down about 4 or 5 inches, and it was great.
Did you take it to the field?
We went, oh yeah, yes we did. Couldn't keep enough ammunition on it, but we took it.
I bet that's jungle busting at its extreme.
That was fun. That was doing something we shouldn't be doing.
All right. Well, I'm done, unless you want to add something.
No, I appreciate that I got to say what I did. I get emotional.
Why not?
That's part of it.
Did you see that Ken Burns Vietnam thing?
Yes, I did.
Did you watch it all?
No, I did not. I was upset with it.
Why?
It's more anti-war than it is anything. It never. I don't think they get a fair shake for the guys that were there, and a lot of the guys that I served with didn't like it either. So we've talked about it.
Have you?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But actually, on my Facebook's pictures, they actually showed our unit, my vehicle and everything, so,
Your vehicle?
yeah. Mhm.
Are you in it?
Yeah.
Can I see you?
Probably not. There's a bunch of little Arvins on there with us.
Okay. That's what I wanted to ask you. What were they like? Your experience with them?
They were in the way.
They were in the way.
Yeah, I never worked with the ones they were local, the local guys. I don't think I ever worked with any of their elite units that were, from what I was told, were very good. They just basically got in the way. On the morning of the 15th in June, when they took me back to the rear, that slit trench that we had crossed, they were all piled in there hiding, every one of them. You couldn't get another body in there if you squeezed them.
Really?
Yeah. So I was never thrilled with them. But that's man, I'm sure I hurt someone's feelings, but I can live with that.
Thanks, my friend.
Thank you. I needed to say this.
Okay. You'll think your grandmother's name.
Whitman. Whitman.
Whitman.
Whitman. W-H-I-T-M-A-N. Whitman.
Grandma Whitman's proud.